Yeah. This actually brings us to also the main topic of today's conversation, the purpose of Buddha nature teachings. Now, I mean, we have two schools of thought, one saying Buddha nature is a provisional teaching with a specific purpose in mind that the Buddha delivered, and then these purposes are counted, whereas others would argue, no, these are not just provisional teachings with a sort of temporary purpose, but they are the objective teachings. So can we discuss this further? You wanted to share a lot about the purpose and especially bring the purpose given in the classical texts to our sort of daily life, how to make it relevant. I mean, we have been talking about Buddha nature and its hopeful use in this world today, but we have not actually gone into any deep discussions about this purpose as presented in the classical text. So please share your take on the purpose.
Thank you, Karma. Yes, this is, I think that might be useful for all of us to remind ourselves of why these teachings were given. And the discussion about the provisional and definitive, I would rather wait a little bit with that. So according to the text itself, there are 5 faults that, that can hinder our progress. And the first fault is really depression, or, low self-esteem, as you say. It's a way of thinking that, I'm not able to do this, whatever it is, but especially I'm certainly not able to reach any state of enlightenment. So this is kind of it can be an obstacle to have this. The second fault or problem that is listed in the text itself is that our lack of respect for other beings. This can hinder our progress. That we hold on to that which has no true existence can hinder our progress. That we ignore the truth, that can hinder our progress. And that we have an inflated kind of feeling of self, this can also hinder our progress. So it is in order to overcome these 5 points that the Buddha nature teachings have been given, according to the Uttaratantrashastra. So what happens when we hear the teaching about Buddha nature? What happens to our mind? It uplifts the mind. It makes us joyful. It makes us enthusiastic. It really creates joy. And this joy then overpowers any feeling of, low self-esteem and so forth. And I would like to, at this point, before going on to the others, I would like to mention that one commentary on the Uttaratantrashastra that I have been working with actually since, for about 40 years now. I'm still finishing up with the Danish translation of it. Is Jamgon Kontrol Lototai's commentary that is already available in English, as called the Buddha nature, or the changeless nature. This was actually translated by some of the earliest students of Khenpo Rinpoche in the West. There was Ken and Katja Holmes who came out with their book, and so followed by Shempen and Rosie Fuchs and Michelle Martin worked on also bringing out that in English. So it exists in English. According to the Khenpo Rinpoche, he then defines the joy as the joy of towards the hardships of the path. So hearing about the Buddha nature brings out a feeling of joy. And this joy is even used as a way of overcoming hardships on the path. So for me, this connects to the teachings on, transforming suffering and happiness onto the path, Kituglamkya, which is the very important practice of, like you could say, alchemy, which is also, there's wonderful texts on this, for example, by the third Drupchen in the Nyingma tradition, and also we see it in the yogic songs by Götangpa, by Milarepa, and so forth, where really hardships are taken as a way of transforming the mind. So I thought about this as I prepared for this talk. Then I thought about this, that the transcendence of suffering is not necessarily some far distant into the future supernatural event, but transcendence of suffering is a conscious decision that is made in every moment. And this is the view then that you could start out with, having this as a view. And this is really, as I said, exemplified in for example, yogi songs. And as students of Khenpo Tsultrim Jamso Rinpoche, we have been taught a lot of the yogi songs, and we use the yogic songs as a way of practicing, because they express, the joy at the hardships. So whether we are a practitioner or not, I think overcoming hardships is something that's relevant for all of us. How do we deal with hardships? How do we deal with adversity? And as ordinary beings, we are really victims of circumstances. But a yogi is somebody who takes charge of his mental states, and he transforms them. So this, I feel, is very relevant to the first point of why the Buddha nature is taught. It is to generate joy, and not just joy that we congratulate ourselves on having a Buddha nature and it's so great, but really joy in the face of hardships. And this, of course, relates also to modern day positive thinking in psychology. This is totally the same. And so this is the first point.
Yeah, so before we move on to the second point, I just wanted to add a couple of things on this. One of the first texts that relates directly to this first point is Bodhicharya Avatara, where Shantideva talks about encouraging people on the path to awakening, saying even flies and insects have the Buddha potential. So as human beings, we ought to be able to reach awakening far more easily. And then the second point is, we these days talk a lot about resilience, isn't it? Personal resilience. And what you mentioned about sort of facing hardship with joy and overcoming them, turning them into your path or to your advantage. That is the kind of personal resilience that we need in most circumstances. I think a lot of people these days give in to low self-esteem and depression and even suicide because they don't have resilience. And I think you have really touched on that very effectively. So let's go then to the second point you wanted to discuss, the second point of not having contempt for other sentient beings.
Yeah, the second point then is that could hinder our progress, and which the Buddha nature teachings then are given to overcome, is that you might look down on other beings, and this complicates our relationship to others. But here the text says we should look at others as if they were Buddhas. Basically, that's what the teaching says. So if we see other beings as Buddhas, of course, there will be absolutely no, it's kind of a pure vision. Yeah, it's a pure vision. And if we act on that, we make everything so much easier for ourselves and others, because as I think was mentioned at your last conversation with Lama Palden, if you smile at people, then you have it will bring out the smile in the other person. And if you really relate to other people's Buddha nature, their pure nature, instead of to their disturbing emotions, it transforms, of course, the situation as well. So this is a given point that I'm sure everybody gets this point. So the second here is really the first point was engendering joy. The second point is to engender respect to others.
But the text also give this connotation, doesn't it? At this Sangha's commentary, I think, to an extent, that the first problem we have is of diffidence, not even generating bodhicitta or that courage to become a Buddha. And then if you overcome that diffidence and generate bodhicitta, you suddenly think, oh, I'm superior, I'm much better than those who haven't generated, and then start to have the second problem of the contempt, and you need to now overcome the second problem.
Yes, because even as practitioners, you may still feel, you are superior to others, especially, if you're saying like you're on the Mahayana path and others are not on the Mahayana path, or they are maybe not even a Buddhist, or they are following another religion, and all sorts of things, of ways we can, not respect others is really at stake here.
Yeah. And that leads on to the third problem. So if we...
Yes. Yeah. So then, as I said, the third problem is that we hold on to that which is not truly existent. And this refers, of course, to the disturbing emotions, all the veils that cover up the mind. Without hearing the teachings on the Buddha nature, which tells us that they are not truly existent. This is what we got. We exaggerate the reality of both our own and also other people's disturbing emotions, our concepts, our our feelings. We take them all very serious, and this is according to the text, there's no basis for this. Everything dependent doesn't have a true existence. So these are actually empty of existence. So we are misguided here. We exaggerate something which does not have really a true existence. And this is the second problem. So hearing about the Buddha nature, we understand that these are merely passing things that pass through our mind, and it's only our own fixation on them which makes, solidifies them. And so this is kind of a relief. So after hearing these teachings from Khenpo Rinpoche, and when you may be noticing what's going through your mind, and just the fact that you can, I can just let that go because I've just been told they really have no true basis.
No. So when we have this fixation on the unreal, the adventitious things, then that leads us also away from the actual truth, the actual reality. That's the fourth problem, isn't it?
That's
not
right.
Appreciating the real Dharma.
Yeah. So when we fixate on the disturbing emotions, both our own and others, we become entangled in a really like worldwide web of confusion, which is what is happening a lot these days. And of course, when we are so wrapped up in that, there's no opportunity. All our time is taken up with what fills the mind with, and there's no opportunity to actually be with your Buddha nature. So as was said, the fourth problem is that we don't, that we ignore the true nature. We fail to experience it. And so hearing about the Buddha nature, hearing about the true nature of the mind and the qualities that it contains is really something that can make us very, can make us gain confidence that resting in the nature of the mind is not a blank state, a blank empty vacuum, but this is the opportunity for letting the natural wisdom unfold. And this, of course, is hard when we are so preoccupied with the superficial layers of the mind. But as I said, if you meet masters, if you are lucky to meet someone who embody these qualities, then you really gain confidence that it's possible.
Yeah, you just mentioned wisdom, and I think Maitreya links wisdom as an antidote to this fourth problem, the fourth problem of integrating and deprecating real truth must be overcome through kind of a pristine wisdom experience.
Yeah, and I would like to maybe add a little bit of interpretation to this fourth point of experiencing the Buddha nature, or the qualities of the true nature of the mind. Khenpo Rinpoche again has equated often the what is called the rangrig, or the self-reflexive awareness, with the Buddha nature. Which is also based on the seventh Karmapa's pramana-based Shentong. Actually, I have been showing in some of my papers that the kind of Shentong that the seventh Karmapa he advocates is based on pramana. So here we are, we can look at the very basic definitions of mind as something, as a cognitive lucidity, as just a basic definition of mind. And this cognitive lucidity of the mind is actually that which enables the mind to experience itself. So most of the time, of course, our, attention is focused outward, like 99% of the time, perhaps. So the rangrig is that part of the mind which is, actually aware of itself. And this is something that happens even when the mind is, defiled. It is still, the luminous quality of the mind is still there, even in the defiled, when there are defiled events happening in the mind. But the rangrig then, according to Khenpo Rinpoche, is that which then can experience our Buddha nature. So it's important. So I thought here to mention that in the context of the fourth point.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. I think we had also some discussion on this in one of our other sessions, Meet the Author session with Professor Mathis, and we were talking about the distinctions between the sort of normal rangrig in the philosophical treatises, and then, or the Brahmana treatises particularly, and then the Soso Rangrig by Yishe, which is, of course, in the Kagyu and Nyingma tradition, as you pointed out through Khenpo's teachings, is I think even the Soso Rangrig by Yishe is rangrig essentially. It is self-conscious. Whereas I think some other traditions may say, no, it's not the rangrig that's normally discussed in the Brahmana literature. It's just a consciousness or an awareness with no duality. So it's, I think, very good to point out that in some traditions, like I think Khenpo Rinpoche's tradition, even the awareness that's non-dual is actually self-conscious rangrig that you find in the Brahmana literature, but without any hypostatization.
Yes, I understand it. It's the basic definitions. There's a rangrig or self-reflexive awareness of the relative states of the mind, which is just the fact that we know what we're thinking, or we know what we're feeling, which is with perhaps some duality there. But then the as you say, the Soso Rangrig Yishe is when you experience the true nature of the mind, which is then, if I may add here to this, what the seventh Karmapa, he says, what the mind is empty of, in the Shentong meaning of being empty, the nature of the mind being empty in the Shentong meaning, he means Shen is then the two, the duality. So empty, Nitong. So it's empty of these two aspects, and that's the Shen. Of course, you can also say that the nature of the mind is Shentong in the sense of being empty of the Adventitian stains per se, but also empty of this duality is his way of interpreting the nature of the mind as Shentong, which relate to our fourth point here.
So now to dwell again on to dwell on our topic of the 5 purposes. The 5th one is coming back to this issue of ego, how sort of self-importance would actually become a problem for awakening.
Yes, and I should like to refer back to your conversation with Lama Palden, where he was saying it's the flip side of the coin, that you have, this low self-esteem, and then you have this necessity for an inflated kind of self, which is also listed then here as the 5th point. And this can be an obstacle or a hindrance on the path. So the teachings on Buddha nature then helps us overcome any kind of exaggerated sense of self by again seeing that the Buddha nature that is in ourselves and in others is the same. And mentioned in Kongtru's commentary on this point is also great love, actually, he says, that we love ourselves and others equally. And again, I would like to refer back to the fact that it's also important with this self-love, the genuine kind of kindness towards yourself in order to be able to, be kind to others. So this is like the 5th point that shows why is the Buddha nature taught.
Yeah, I think we have the 5 problems, if I may summarize what you have shared, that we have to overcome. And then overcoming those 5 problems, you also get 5 merits or 5 benefits, isn't it? That Maitreya presents, saying that if you have this joy and enthusiasm in yourself, having overcome diffidence and low self-esteem, then that leads to respecting others as well. And then that leads to sort of not falling for unreal things, which will lead to recognizing the real truth. And that eventually leads to the great love, Jamchen, which is also in the root verse itself, the great sort of loving kindness that treats all sentient beings equally. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing these 5 purposes. For the audience, I think if you are keen on learning more about this, these are covered in the Ratnagotra Vibhaga or Mahayana Uttaratantra, the ultimate continuum, from chapter 1, from verse 157 to 167. And I think it's quite powerful